Hey guys, welcome back to Muslim Minds. Today we're going to react to the split of Islam between Sunni and the Shia branches. Again, for those who know or don't know, Sunni Islam is the largest branch, Shia Islam is the second largest branch. Sunni Islam is about 85 percentage of the Muslim population, whereas the Shia is 15%. So we're going to react to this video and what differences they mention.
Today, there are more than 1.5 billion Muslims living across the globe, with Muslim-majority countries spreading from Morocco to
And now it's about 2 billion and rising.
Indonesia. But just like virtually all other religions, Islam is not united and has branches interpreting the Quran and matters related to political events in the history of Islam in a different way. The two main denominations of Islam are Sunnism and Shiism, with Sunnis making up 85 to 90% of the Muslim population. But how did the split in the Muslim world happen? In today's video, we're going to talk about the schism in Islam, the emergence of Sunni and Shia Islam, and the effects it had on the caliphate and beyond.
I would like to mention from the very beginning, the differences between Sunni and Shia Islam is not like, for example, other religious branches in different religions. So for Sunni and Shia, they worship the same God, have the same understanding of God, same understanding of the prophets in general, aside from their minor deviance. So you have Shia and then very minor fractured branches from Shiism, which are no longer, they're either very small or they no longer exist, and same thing with Sunni Islam. But the main thing they disagree is pretty much the politics after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
We need to start our story with Ali ibn Abi Talib, one of the most important people in the history of Islam. Ali was born in Mecca in the powerful Hashimi clan and was a cousin of the Muslim prophet Muhammad. They had a strong bond, as Ali's father had raised Muhammad when he became orphaned, and later Ali would live in Muhammad's household. When in 610 AD Muhammad proclaimed his prophethood, Ali was one of the first people to accept Islam and recognize Muhammad as the prophet. But Muhammad's proselytizing was not initially popular among the polytheistic Meccans, and he and the early Muslims had been oppressed. The rumors of a plot against Muhammad were spreading, forcing him to leave Mecca for Medina with the majority of his followers in 622.
Yeah, just to further dive into that point, so when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is starting to preach monotheism, the pagan Arabs don't like that. For one, it's going against their customs, and number two, even business, because they were profiting off the idols around the holy temple, where people from all over the peninsula would come and do a pilgrimage, and they would donate their money to these false gods. So when the Prophet is creating an uprising regarding their business and their customs, they were boycotted for many years, attacked. A lot of the early Muslims were weak. They were slaves. They were the downcast. So it got to a point where it was so bad their property was stolen and they were just being starved effectively. So they had to relocate to a city that would be more accommodating to the Muslims, and from there actually live a sustainable life.
Which was called Hijra, the migration, an event so momentous that the new Islamic calendar starts with that day. Initially, Ali stayed behind to return people the possessions they had entrusted upon the Prophet for safekeeping, but very soon he joined other Muslims in Medina, and in 623 married Muhammad's daughter Fatima Zahra, becoming one of the most trusted companions of Muhammad. Known in the Muslim community for wisdom and fairness, he earned the nickname Asad Allah.
And just by the way, another point, Ali who was a very close companion, because like this, not only was he the Prophet Muhammad's cousin and married his daughter, he was also one of the first people to accept Islam. And some people say he might have been the first, but there was a general consensus that he was like the first child to accept Islam.
Yeah,
so
the
that's
first
why
young person to accept Islam.
The first young person.
And you see him in many of the battles. You see him donating his wealth, being by the Prophet in times of difficulty. So Ali has done a lot in the Islamic history for him to be noted as one of the highest regarded companions for both Sunni and the Shia Muslims.
The Lion of God for his military exploits and courage on the battlefield. By 631, the Islamic community, the Ummah, had been able to assert control over Mecca and large swaths of the Arabian Peninsula, and was already a formidable force. But who was going to succeed aging Muhammad? And this is the root of the split in Islam. As one would expect, Sunni and Shia sources offer different interpretations. On the way back from his last pilgrimage, Muhammad gave a sermon at the Ghadir Kum oasis, took Ali by his hand, and proclaimed that anyone who has me as his mullah has Ali as his mullah. Shia theology believes that in Ghadir Kum, the Prophet designated Ali as his successor by calling him mullah, a polysemous Arabic word with several meanings, one of which is leader or master. Sunnis believe that the Ghadir Kum episode was merely a proclamation of affinity of the Prophet to his loyal.
Not just affinity, I could be mistaken, but Ali was also about to go on an expedition, which he was going to be the head, and there was some dissension among the Muslims for some reason that Ali was going to be the leader for this faction. And the Prophet ﷺ, in order to reinforce their confidence in Ali, he had this event. This is an interpretation. Another interpretation is that the Prophet ﷺ is indicating that Ali is a very high and noble companion and that he is qualified to be the caliph. My contention is that the Prophet ﷺ in any hadith or narration never says who should be the first caliph. It seems like he recommends a lot of people who are valid, but if the Prophet wanted a specific order, or if he wanted it to be very clear that Ali would be the caliph, then wouldn't it make sense for him to say, Ali will be the caliph after me? He will be the leader of the Muslims after me? Why would this matter be left vague unless it's allowed for it to be voted upon by the Muslims and for them to come to a consensus on their own? This is one thing that I think from a Sunni perspective makes a lot of sense. That there are plenty of valid or noble companions, and the companions were, at some points even shy with trying to take power over one another or even trying to distinguish themselves as honorable among the other. And you even see this with Ali and Abu Bakr. There was a time, there's a hadith where they were both about to enter the Prophet ﷺ's house, and both of them were hesitant to do so, and they kept listing off each other's accomplishments to kind of praise the other one, say, no, you should go into the Prophet ﷺ, you should go knock on his door instead of me, I'm not worth it like you. So they were respectful of one another, they would talk highly of one another. So this event to me is not convincing enough to say Ali is the caliph, the first ruler of the Muslims.
Royal companion and son-in-law, and interpret the word Mawla using its second definition, a friend. Another important episode in the succession dispute between the Sunni and Shia theologies is connected to the so-called pen and paper episode. This is considered a genuine hadith, as both Sunni and Shia theologians accept it, but interpret it differently. In Islam, a hadith is a story on the life of Muhammad with religious and legal messages for the Muslim community, and according to this one, a few days before his death, Muhammad asked his companions to bring him pen and paper so that he could write a statement in order to prevent the Ummah from going astray after his death. But one of Muhammad's closest companions, Umar, said, "The Prophet is seriously ill, and we have got Allah's book with us, and that is sufficient for us." This led to a loud dispute in the room in the presence of Muhammad, who got unhappy and called everyone to leave. It is still unclear what the Prophet wanted to write. Shias claim that he intended to designate Ali as his successor.
Immediately I would fire back with how? How do you know that? There's no way to know what he was going to write on that paper.
The Prophet, I thought he can't write, he's illiterate.
No, that's another. So the Prophet couldn't write in general, especially at the beginning of his prophecy, but actually towards the end of his life, he was able to write very small, basic messages. Because when they say he's illiterate, can't read or write, that means he can't do it efficiently or proficiently. Like he couldn't write a novel, he couldn't write poems or passages, or he couldn't write the Quran by his own hand because he wasn't that proficient in writing. But just for example, a grown adult in our modern day, let's say he didn't know how to read or write, he could probably formulate a very small, simple passage or with whatever means he has. It just means that it wasn't prevalent or well known or very established among the people of that time, because they didn't have enough parchment to write on. They would write on animal bone, rocks, leaves, and it just wasn't a common practice. Most of the Arabs would memorize things through oral or memory-based traditions. They wouldn't make it a point to write things down necessarily all the time, except for the few who could, which is also the case with the Quran. Most of it was memorized, or all of it actually was memorized by during the time of the Prophet by several companions. but it was also fully written down by those companions who knew how to write. And they would write it on bone again, or leaves, or other types of parchment.
But yeah, I don't know how the Shia have some other reason they think it would be Ali, or it's just guesswork, or what.
Yeah, this example on its own is not sufficient whatsoever. There's no way to know what the Prophet ﷺ intended to write. You would have to read into the situation. He could have written
and the fact
anything.
that we don't know, we shouldn't think anything of it.
Yeah, he could have written Abu Bakr will be the first caliph, right? So
could have been something not even regarding this. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's no way to determine this. According to Sunnis, the Prophet did not explicitly designate a successor and left it for the Islamic community to decide.
Not just Sunnis, but this is what is apparent in the tradition. He did not specifically designate anyone as a caliphate with those words or that statement, but he heavily implied several individuals. By the way, he highly spoke of Umar in authentic hadiths, Ali, Abu Bakr. So
there are other events which Sunnis and Shia base their claims on regarding the succession, but in short, following Muhammad's death in 632, the Ummah did not have a consensus on a new leader. While Ali took charge of the arrangements of the funeral, a meeting to decide the successor took place in Medina. Ali and two other prominent companions of the Prophet, Abu Bakr and Umar, were not present, and deliberations took place without them.
Why does it have the funeral of Muhammad ﷺ in Mecca? Is that like, did I miss something? Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ passed away in Medina and he was buried in Medina. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention, but this is not right.
In fact, the majority of those present were the Muslims residing in Medina, who welcomed Muhammad or were converted later, while very few of those who went on a hijrah from Mecca to Medina with Muhammad were there. Abu Bakr and Umar rushed to the meeting and took charge of the process in Ali's absence. The former was one of the first converts to Islam, Muhammad's father-in-law through his daughter Aisha. Deeply respected by modern Sunnis, he was very rich and contributed a lot to the cause of Islam and was arguably one of the main contenders for leadership. Umar was also a close companion of Muhammad, also his father-in-law through his daughter Hafsa, known for his zealous protection of the Prophet. He is known as a just, intelligent and wise person in the Sunni tradition. After a heated debate, Umar was able to persuade those present to choose Abu Bakr as the successor, the caliph, a ruler of the Muslim Ummah. Ali was later presented with the
Some people like to contend the fact that there was such a heated debate or council regarding the caliphate. I don't see how that can be a contentious point because the Prophet ﷺ made a point of establishing a caliphate after him. So I would say the best of the Muslims would be those who would make it a point to try to fulfill this command by the Prophet by making sure the matter was taken seriously, having a debate, trying to choose the most appropriate leader for the Muslim community. And Ali, he was preoccupied with another extremely important task, which is taking care of the funeral processes of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So
yeah, and also an important thing to know and keep in mind in Islam, you are not allowed to vie for leadership. If someone wants to be a leader, then that just proves that that person is not genuine. So Abu Bakr, anhu, he did not vie for leadership. He even denied it many times to become the Khalifa. But after everyone made pledge to him, then he had that responsibility that all the Muslim Ummah, they elected you a leader, so you can't turn back on them. But if you vie to be a leader, you cannot be a leader in Islam. Abu Bakr, anhu,
you have to be chosen.
Yeah, you have to be chosen. And then once you have the responsibility, you shouldn't turn back. But it's not like it wasn't a competition. No one wanted to be the Khalifa, because that is so much responsibility. You have every Muslim's.
You now have every religion of Islam on your shoulders.
The whole nation is upon you, and you will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. So it's important to point that out.
The people have to elect you, and by the people electing you, it shows your status of being the leader. That they see you as a leader, therefore you can be the leader. And at the time, being one of the most senior companions, also senior in age and experience, Abu Bakr was a very proper choice, because once Abu Bakr was elected at the caliphate, he held Islam. the cohesion remained, and they had the apostate wars right after that. So you have false prophets popping up out of nowhere. Some of the newer converts to Islam try to align with these false prophets, and then you have apostates. So they had these what they call Ridda wars. So Abu Bakr pretty much held down Islam in its origin, and then following that you have Abu Bakr who encouraged the expansion of Islam, and then you have Uthman who also maintained the law of Islam in the Quran and the scripture, and then Ali was the final righteous caliphate that maintained the ummah as much as he could until dissension came out and division broke the ummah apart. So.
Fact of succession, and along with a number of other companions, initially refused to accept the decision as it was taken without him, while he was one of the strongest candidates. Umar embarked on the process of persuading or forcing the companions to offer fealty to Abu Bakr. He personally came to Ali's house to persuade him. The events which followed have been the subject of much dispute, as the Sunnis believe that Umar was able to peacefully persuade Ali to recognize Abu Bakr's caliphate. According to Shia sources, Umar forced Ali to concede by breaking into the house and slamming the door, which broke Ali's wife Fatima Zahra's ribs, eventually leading to the miscarriage of their child. Ali himself was tied with a rope to force his allegiance. It is impossible to verify what really happened, but eventually Ali accepted Abu Bakr and his successor Umar as caliphs.
So you have two sides trying to paint a narrative. Obviously the Shia will want this narrative to be as violent and as forced as possible because it is known that Ali gave the allegiance, but they don't want Ali to make it seem like he willingly gave the allegiance, so they come up with this bizarre story that has no historical basis. Now, I will also say the Sunni Muslims are probably also kind of watering down the story a little bit, making it seem like it was just peaceful and like clear as day, but it's totally fine and acceptable if Ali didn't really agree or had some kind of feelings in his heart against maybe, you know, being the caliph. Maybe he wanted to be the caliphate. And this is something that is totally fine and permissible. It doesn't have to mean the extreme that Abu Bakr and Umar are hypocrites, or Ali is a hypocrite, or like everyone is. It could just be a disagreement. This is what I don't understand. People take
just human beings.
Yeah, take
like
human
us.
natures. They also had disagreements. They had normal human interactions with one another. So
and
it's
like
understandable.
If, obviously no disrespect, but if you're saying that Ali radiallahu anhu wanted the leadership, that just kind of shows he wasn't ready. Also, he was a younger companion.
Exactly.
He had Abu Bakr, who was the Prophet ﷺ's friend, in some way mentioned in the Quran, not by name. Then Umar, which is also an older person, only a couple years younger than them. So when it was Ali's time, his time came, but I don't see.
But even
what
if
the
you
issue is.
view the caliphate of Ali, he was one of the four rightly guided caliphs, but even he had his difficulties with the people of Kufa because being a leader requires so much. And Ali is probably one of the greatest leaders that could ever be, but Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman had that much more experience to hold more cohesion. But Ali had himself sent letters to Makkah and Medina complaining about how the people of Kufa were difficult to manage and the stress of kind of being their ruler. It was a lot. It was a burden. And, so those who are older and have more wisdom and experience, it makes sense why they would be elected. And Ali being considered the young one out of the four, it would make sense why the community might wait for him. He might be a bit rash. He might be a bit not as experienced as his predecessors, and that's totally fine. It doesn't denote anyone being better or worse. It's just who is better suited for this current position.
And retired from public life. He was often consulted in matters of state. Ali accepted the selection of Umar as caliph and even gave one of his daughters, Kulthum, to him in marriage.
So you have all of these things that show what? That shows that Ali had worked with the community, worked with the caliphs at the time, Abu Bakr and Umar, and from the authentic sources, Ali was serving on their councils. Even at the death of Uthman, Ali sent his sons Hassan and Husayn to guard his house, to protect his house from the assailants, right? So he wouldn't do this if he believed they're munafiqeen or hypocrites and they're all going to hellfire. This wouldn't be representative of his actions. He would want their caliphs to end, but he didn't. He defended them.
Yeah, if the Shia story about Umar who kicking the door in and breaking Fatima's ribs, then why would Ali give his daughter to Umar? It seems kind of That doesn't make sense.
Nonsensical.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Why would that happen?
What was his retaliation to Umar doing that to his wife?
Married the daughter, married him.
It doesn't make sense.
That's already seeming a little bit inconsistent just based on those two things.
After the death of Umar in 644, Ali was considered for the position, but eventually another companion of Muhammad, Uthman of the Banu Umayyad clan, became the new caliph.
See, like they were being considered, they had councils, they had meetings, voting. This was how they determined who they wanted the next caliphate to be. So, and Ali became number 4. So after open voting and consideration of the other options at hand. So I don't see how this is like a severe problem, because there are several companions who were with the Prophet supporting him throughout his entire life. These people are qualified, all of them, to be leaders, and they elected whoever they wanted to be as the leader. I don't see the problem.
Again, Ali recognized the new caliph, but very soon discontent in the caliphate grew. Again, the sources do not agree on the reasons, but many claimed that Uthman's nepotism and leniency towards tribal rivalries were the cause of the opposition against him. Rebels offered to support Ali as an alternative to Uthman, but Ali refused and even sent his sons, Hassan and Husayn, to protect Uthman's house, where eventually, despite all the protection, Uthman was assassinated.
Because even Ali himself, even if he disagrees, which is valid, again, that is fine to disagree, he would want cohesion in the ummah. He wouldn't want to cause dissension. So even if Ali believed that he would have a better course of action, he didn't follow this course of action, and he defended Uthman because the number one thing Ali would want is a unity among the Muslim world.
Assassinated by rebels from Egypt in 656. Finally, Ali's turn to become a caliph came, and he became the 4th and last of the Rashidun caliphs. But his election was not smooth, and he became a caliph amidst very tumultuous times. The Prophet's wife Aisha and Uthman's relatives from the Banu Umayyad clan, including the governor of Syria Muawiyah, demanded that Ali punish the plotters of Uthman's death, but since some of them were Ali's supporters, the new caliph rejected this, and soon the first Muslim civil war, called Fitna, started. In December 656, Ali's army defeated the rebels at the Battle of Camel near Basra. But Muawiyah still refused to accept Ali as a new caliph, and the anti-Ali opposition gathered around him. Ali was willing to not repeat Uthman's mistakes, and carried out measures to centralize the caliphate and decrease the power of governors. The two men assembled their armies and confronted each other at Siffin on the Euphrates in 657. Neither side was keen to commit to a major battle, but after 3 months of occasional skirmishes, when serious fighting finally broke out, Muawiyah's followers called for an arbitration, apparently riding out with copies of the Quran on their lances to bring the conflict to a stop. Ali was forced to agree, but some of his followers objected and abandoned him. They became known as the Kharijis, from the Arabic verb kharaja, to leave, because they left Ali's army. According to the arbitration, which took place at Adrur in 658 or 659, it was ruled that both Ali and Muawiyah should relinquish their claims, and the Muslim Ummah should have a chance to choose their own ruler. Ali rejected this ruling, and the stalemate continued as Muawiyah's supporters proclaimed him a caliph in Damascus in 660. The following year, Ali was assassinated by the Kharijis while praying in the mosque at Kufa.
And I would like to mention the vast majority, I could say there's probably a consensus on this, for Sunni Muslims, is that Ali had more right to be the Khalifa than Muawiyah. And Muawiyah, whatever his intentions may have been, was wrong for opposing Ali.
Ali's son Hassan was proclaimed a new caliph in Kufa, which became the capital during Ali's short reign. But Muawiyah had a far stronger army. Thus Hassan stepped down as a caliph in order to avoid further bloodshed, and a treaty between the sides was signed. According to the treaty, Hassan accepted Muawiyah as a caliph under the condition that he would act in accordance with Islam. Muawiyah would not appoint a successor, and a new caliph should be elected by the electoral council, Shura.
See, Hassan himself, Ali's son, is saying what? That the appointing of a successor should be through electoral council, Shura. not that it's mandated. So even like if a Shia is looking at this, right, or for example, I mean, I would encourage you to look with an open mind, because Hassan himself is saying you can't appoint a successor. So how would Hassan, the son of Ali radiallahu an, how would he encourage the successor of the caliphate? He's saying through shura, through electoral council, through voting, right? Not that, I should return back to my family.
So just like it goes back to the Prophet ﷺ not appointing anyone, it was through shura. Yeah. So if
because there are issues that you need to address. There is no clear mention of who the Khalifa should be. There was heavy emphasis on Abu Bakr. There was emphasis on Ali. I can even, we can concede that as well. And not directly for them being leaders, but there are also other people who are highly revered in Islam of the companions that would also make good leaders, which is why they were chosen, like Umar ibn al-Khattab or Uthman ibn Affan, right?
Muawiyah would abandon cursing Ali and persecuting Ali's family and supporters. But Muawiyah would not stay true to his pledges, and towards the end of his reign, he designated his son Yazid as a successor. This would be breaking off the tradition of the Islamic Caliphate as a state, which elected its leader through consultation or election, to a monarchy. Muawiyah summoned the Shura in Damascus, the new capital of the Caliphate, and through persuasion and bribery was able to secure support for Yazid. This development caused significant opposition in different quarters, and this opposition started gathering around Muhammad's grandson and Ali's son Husayn, who replaced Hassan, who passed away in 670, as the leader. Despite the opposition, Muawiyah was able to secure the support of Mecca and Medina for Yazid. Ali's capital Kufa was the potential stronghold of the opposition, and the death of Muawiyah in 680 put events which would further divide the Islamic world into action. Following Muawiyah's death, Yazid became the new caliph and immediately demanded allegiance of Husayn. Yazid's envoy could not persuade Husayn to do this and was afraid of killing him, since Husayn was the Prophet's grandson. Around the same time, the people of the city of Kufa started sending letters to Husayn, informing him about their opposition to the Umayyad rule, their support for him, and intention to remove Yazid from power and install him instead. The Kufans sided with Ali during the first fitna, continued to support his family by backing Hassan, and were unhappy when he abdicated in favor of Muawiyah. Husayn accepted this call and sent his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil to Kufa to assess the situation and gather support. Initially, Muslim ibn Aqil was very successful, and he informed Husayn of his progress. Yazid was forced to change the governor of Kufa to defeat the opposition in the city, and the new governor succeeded in doing just that. With support dwindling, Muslim ibn Aqil decided to carry out a revolt before Husayn's arrival, but it was defeated. Husayn did not know about this, and in September of 680 started his journey towards Kufa with around 50 men and his family members. On the way, Husayn received information about the death of Muslim ibn Aqil and the defeat of the revolt in Kufa. He called on those who joined him on the way to leave, understanding the futility of his attempt to challenge Yazid. Very soon Yazid's forces confronted Husayn, and an envoy of Kufa's new governor told Husayn to come with him or turn back and go anywhere but Medina. Husayn refused and continued on his path with the envoy's forces accompanying him. On the 2nd of October, Husayn reached Karbala and set camp there. On the following day, Yazid sent an additional 4,000 men to confront Husayn. The Umayyad army had orders to prevent Husayn's men from accessing the Euphrates River in order to force them to concede due to lack of water. But 3 days later, Husayn's group was able to access water, creating a stalemate. For over a week, Yazid's officials had tried to persuade Husayn to accept his fate and pledge allegiance to Yazid, since they understood.
And I would like to make a mention for the record from the Sunni paradigm. This is all wrong. What happened to Husayn was unjust, and Sunni and Shia both agreed that whatever happened to Husayn at Karbala is completely, it's sad, it's devastating, it's wrong. This is the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But at this moment in time, it wasn't a Sunni Shia problem. It was an internal Ummah Muslim politics. Yazid, Muawiyah, Ali, Husayn, Hassan, all this was inside the Muslim world. Now you could say you side with people, some side with Muawiyah, some side with Yazid, Ali, and we would say that those who are siding with Ali, those who are siding with Husayn, they are correct. They're Muslims, like all the other Muslims, and their viewpoints were correct in the defense of Ali against those who, tried to incite a war for not going after the murders of Uthman, or defending Husayn at the Battle of Karbala. These are things that we can all definitely support and agree upon, that this was wrong and it should have never happened.
The consequences of attacking the Prophet's grandson. Ultimately, Husayn refused the offers of Yazid, and on the 10th of October, the Umayyad army approached Husayn's camp, and both sides took their battle positions. Husayn's companions fought valiantly, but the forces were extremely uneven. He and his men were massacred. This included 7 sons of Ali, including Husayn himself, 2 of Husayn's sons, 3 sons of his brother Hassan, and the other grandchildren of Ali. Many from the Prophet's family were killed. This was a final straw, completing the schism in the Islamic world and dividing it into Sunni and Shia.
From this moment here, what happened at Karbala is the birth of religious Shiaism. You start to see theological differences. People doing ziyarat or visiting Husayn's grave and doing in mourning and doing the matam, things that are not backed by Islamic theology at all. Going to someone's grave and and wailing over it and crying and beating yourself and labbaika ya Husayn. These are all innovations that happen from an emotional connection to the death of what happened in Karbala and Husayn and Ali. These are later developing emotional reactions to the event, which birthed several different theological strands in Shiaism.
The process, which started with the dispute over succession to Muhammad and continued with the killing of Ali and Husayn, caused the split of Islam, with Shi'at Ali, Ali's party, first becoming a political movement within Islam and later transforming into a branch of Islam, offering alternative interpretations.
Yeah, exactly. It started as a political movement, which then developed its own theological differences and then making it a different Islamic branch, right?
Of the Quran and Hadiths, its own view on Islamic jurisprudence, on state and some religious practices, venerating the people of the house, al-Bayt, Muhammad's direct descendants as his righteous successors.
And one has to wonder, why do they focus so much on the Ahlul Bayt? Both the Sunni and the Shia love the Ahlul Bayt, but the reason the Shia are focusing on them is because their branch of Islam stems from the heartache of the Muslim Ummah. It comes from the death of Husayn. It comes from the death of Ali. It comes from the unfairness in the caliphate of Ali, how he had a differing, how there were 2 caliphates at the same time, and he had to battle out with Muawiyah. And you have the slaughter of the Ahlul Bayt. This is why their focus is so much on the Ahlul Bayt, because again, it comes from an emotional connection and an emotional charge. The Sunni response is that there's still Islam, we still have our theology, our focus is still Allah and His Messenger, but in regards to the Islamic history, we do have our opinions on it. And the opinion in regards to this is similar to the sense that, well, we have Ali definitely as a valid caliph. Doesn't matter that he's the first, he was the fourth, he was the righteous 4th caliph. And we love the Ahlul Bayt, we love his sons. And what happened to all of them is completely unjust, and they had more of a right to rule than their counterparts at that time.
Right, but why did they adopt like different religious beliefs? That seems kind of strange, and different things like veneration of Ali. Obviously he was a Khalifa, but those things are directly against what Islam teaches, so that's why there's some...
It comes from the region. It comes from the region and the tragedy. So
of course.
You have what happened to, for example, the people of Kufa betrayed Husayn. They didn't come out to support him at the Battle of Karbala. That's why he had no men, even though they said we're going to be there to support you. They were all bribed away. But
then they're the ones that are also sad about it.
Exactly. So you have
a little seems a little bit hypocritical at the same time. And then if they're doing things that are I won't say un-Islamic, but kind of, well, maybe they are, like calling upon Hassan, Husayn, and Ali. That is something we can consider shirk. and stuff like that. So it just seems a little strange, those practices.
So yeah, when Ibn Ziyad comes to Kufa, he's able to bribe all the Kufans to not support Husayn anymore. But then you have the Kufans regret and feel remorse for what happened to Husayn. They start visiting his grave, they start wailing over his grave, and then this emotional tradition starts to build a narrative over time where you have your own kind of theological differences, the main ones being the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ being the final messenger, and Allah being God. All these things are agreed upon, but then you have some religious differences that try to slander the other companions that didn't agree eye to eye with Ali, because everything has been kind of over exaggerated in the sense of what happened due to emotional connection and emotional charge. And it comes from that very same community that witnessed and in some ways even betrayed Husayn and Ali. The Kufans giving Ali a hard time, the Kufans betraying Husayn, and it was in this region where you have all of a sudden a severe attachment and emotional connection to them, and it's birthed from I would say from guilt.
The Sunni, also known as the people of the Sunnah and the community, Ala Sunnah wa al-Jama, remained the majority in Islam, and although naturally there has been some transformation in Sunni Islam in comparison with early Islam, coming with new times and different interpretations of holy texts by Sunni scholars, the main distinctions between the two largest branches of Islam go back to the events we have described above. And while Sunni theology respects the Al-Bayt as well, it rejects the premise that the Islamic Ummah should be ruled by the Al-Bayt.
Because it was not specified by the Prophet ﷺ.
The killing of Ali, the massacre of Husayn, his family members and companions, strengthened the sense of injustice against the Prophet's family among the Shia Muslims, and turned martyrdom into one of its main pillars. Ali's martyrdom during the prayer, Husayn's martyrdom during the struggle against the perceived tyrant and usurper, turned into a powerful symbol of Shia Islam. The first month of the Muslim calendar, Muharram, is the annual period of mourning for the Shia Muslims, with the 10th of Muharram, known as Ashura, the day of the Battle of Karbala, becoming the peak day of mourning ceremonies. Millions of devoted Shias make the Arba'in pilgrimage on foot to the holy shrine of Imam Husayn in Karbala every year.
See, in this where is this backed by from Islamic theology, Quran, Sunnah? This is something related to history, of course, dealing with the Prophet ﷺ's family. But to go and do pilgrimage and then have these beliefs, such as if you go and do ziyarah to Husayn's grave, you get the reward of 1,000 umrah, or martyred 1,000 times. Or if you eat the sand from his grave, that you are cured from illnesses. These are legitimate beliefs. I'll say as a Sunni Muslim right now that our Shia brothers and sisters are that brothers and sisters in Islam. And I don't make distinction with them theologically unless they do. The only difference is politically, what they believe regarding the events of the caliphate.
The Shia defeat in the Battle of Karbala did not stop the supporters of the Al-Bayt from opposing the existing state of affairs in the Islamic world. Dissenters to the existing state of affairs in Islam would take up the flag of the party of Ali and challenge the rule of the caliphate. Numerous powerful states and dynasties, such as the Fatimids, Buyids, Nizaris, Safavids, and others, emerged throughout the Islamic world, armed with the powerful idea of Shia Islam. In our episode on...
So again, I would say generally, the Shia Muslims are our brothers and sisters. They believe in the same things theologically. They believe in Allah, they believe in His Messenger. They have differing opinions about His companions in the caliphate, but they're still Muslims, and they come from a sincere love and respect of His family. And I can definitely respect and understand that. I would just request that, for all of Islam's history, it's been on one side, and it hasn't been in the Shia side. The Holy Land, the tradition, the, overwhelming preservation of the history, there's a reason it's with not within the Shia realm. And the Shia realm is because it's too attached to the Ahlul Bayt. It's too attached to these events, these tragic events, which are immensely important. But as Muslims, as human beings, as our own individuals, We live with our own lives in submission to Allah and His Messenger and the Quran. And that's our theology. Our theology is not to, kind of consistently focus on Husayn and Ali and go and do ziyarah to their graves. You can pray for them. You can respect them and love them as we do. But I feel like when you think of Shia Islam, you don't think primarily of Allah and Muhammad sallallahu in the Quran. The first things that pop in your brain is Ali or Husayn or
Yeah,
these
and
kind
also
of things. I think that's very telling.
Yeah, a major thing that wasn't talked about, also some Shia people, maybe not all, but some of them, they actually disrespect Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman radiallahu anhuma, and Aisha radiallahu anha. So that is also a major discontention between Sunnis and Shias, that they disrespect the Prophet's closest companions and people he loved. So that's also another reason why there's some disconnect.
Their resources for that are very weak in their authenticity, just like their claim of Ali being ordained as the first caliph has
just like
no concrete proof.
Just like how we talked about Ali, he gave his daughter to Umar radiallahu anhu. Why would he do that if it was such disrespect? And all their family, there's marriages and stuff, they were all connected and familially. They were all connected, so it's like Umar radiallahu anhu was the Prophet Muhammad's father-in-law. That's crazy if you actually think about that. I've not really thought about that.
And then the way they have to explain
so
all
how can
this
there be
away,
the disrespect,
The way they have to explain all this away is by making them criminals, by making them usurpers. So Abu Bakr was just a usurper. Oh, and his daughter, by the way, Aisha radiallahu anha, she was also evil, is what they say, a'udhu billah. Oh, Hafsa as well, because she's related to Umar ibn al-Khattab, also evil. It's like it's convenient. Like, so it just happens to be that they had the power. Okay, but we're just going to label them all as evil hypocrites. So then that way it looks like the power is just usurped, and that's why Ali didn't get it. Rather, it could be through shura or election, just like Hassan himself advocated for.
His son, yeah.
Right? And the Prophet ﷺ never once, there's not a single Quranic verse or hadith where the Prophet ﷺ explicitly says it has to be like this with the caliphate, that it has to be from my progeny, number one, and number two, that Ali has to be the first caliphate. You have that one event at Ghadir Qum, which the Prophet ﷺ is emphasizing the importance of Ali. It could be in relation to the battle that Ali was about to be, or that he was planning to embark upon, or it could be a denotion of status of Ali, or it even could be that he, should be a Khalifa. But at what stage, at what time? Because during the time of the Prophet ﷺ's death, he kept encouraging who to lead the Salah? Abu Bakr. And he kept emphasizing Abu Bakr needs to lead the Salah. Lead the prayer after as the next person after the Prophet ﷺ. That's also extremely emphasizing that Abu Bakr should be the Khalifa.
Yeah.
And under this Khalifa, you have the preservation of Islam, preservation of the Quran, and you have the spread of the Muslim world all over the world. Not to say that Allah needed these people, but Allah honored these people to be those that you can credit it to. That Allah chose Abu Bakr for the Ridda wars and to stave off the apostasy. Allah chose Umar ibn al-Khattab to spread Islam. Allah chose Uthman ibn Affan to standardize the Quran in several different provinces around the Muslim Ummah, not just in Makkah and Medina, like it was already established and they already had these copies, but to rather bring these master copies and Hufaz to go and to make sure any possible variants were staved out. And then you have Ali, the final gate of the righteous caliphs before afterwards the quality of the leadership fell tremendously, right?
Yeah.
So again, there are political differences. It's an analyzation of history. As those who are not Shia, we just don't mix the history with the theology. We just look at it with the lens of history, and we preserve what the Prophet ﷺ has said about his most righteous companions through authentic sources. And if they're not authentic sources, then I don't know what you could deem to be authentic. Several chains of narration reporting the same thing. If you just throw those all away, then you're also throwing away a big chunk of the validity of Islamic history. Okay guys, hope you really enjoyed this video. Again, nothing but love and respect for our Shia Muslim brothers and sisters. This is just our perspective and the perspective of the rest of the Muslim Ummah.
Yeah, if you said anything wrong, it's not our intention. Anything we said wrong, please correct us in the comment section. We're just here learning, we're not scholars. But yeah, if you like this video, leave some feedback in the comments. Any other reactions you guys want us to see, leave that as well. Also, like and subscribe for more videos and to support our channel. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.